Hello, this is Richard Anderson, and we've got a case here where the person has a Toric prescription, minus 375, minus 150 with the rule, and the post-wear refraction was spherical, so they managed to get rid of the cylinder, but they have an over-refraction of minus 150. So an undercorrected with the cylinder being corrected. This design was done with a Toric OZ and increasing power in the vertical meridian to get rid of the astigmatism. So we were successful there. The first thing I try to figure out looking at a post-wear topo is where is the lens touching? Do we have central bearing? Are we bearing out in the periphery? Being able to identify how that lens is actually fitting on the eye is usually the most critical component to figure out what we're going to do here. The original topo from over a year ago was this one here in the lower right, and the doctor said that the patient has very tight lids. It's hard to get these lids open, and everybody's squeezing tight, and it's just difficult to get these topos, so they probably did pretty good just to get it like this. They had one design that wasn't working. They stopped wearing the lens for a while, and then they retook this topo and designed the lens from this second topo within the last few months here. So the one thing I would look at when I try to look at the topos is see what gets imported. And when we look at what got imported between those two a year ago and this year, the one from a year ago is shown here, and if we look at what Wave did here, it's fairly symmetric in that we're starting steep in the middle and we're generally going flatter and flatter as we go out towards the edge. The one that was repeated, that the most current design was used for, the Wave gets a little confused about what was happening. It goes steep, then it flattens, then it goes steep again, then it goes flat. So we've got a potentially difficult original importing topo to give us the design, so I'm not surprised that we probably got our sag wrong on the whole thing. If you look at this, try to find a topo that is going to give us something that's would match with the eye, what you'd expect the eye to be doing. When I look at the post-wear topo, trying to decide if I'm steep or flat, or too much or too little sag, more accurately, the first thing I looked at is I thought this is probably flat because I've got all this lack of bearing off in the periphery, but we've also got some pretty strong touch points here, and we actually have moved in. If we look at the original topo, we're flatting out here out beyond 7, and here we're flatting inside of the 7mm circle. So we've actually pushed in here. The cornea is fairly asymmetric, and it's not an even flatness all the way around. I think what we're doing here is actually touching fairly hard here, which would mean our sag's too great, and we actually need to flatten the lens out more. Then one thing that the doctor said in their comments was that the fluorescein pattern does not appear to have a very defined bullseye appearance, and that's sort of the clincher. Basically, it's saying that our sag is up too high. We haven't pushed down enough in the central area here to create the bullseye on the fluorescein pattern. So in this lens, what we're going to have to do is actually decrease the sag of the lens. If we look at how the design was put, they decreased it out here, and because they were trying to keep off of this flat area, and that was very reasonable. The overall result is, though, that we've got too much of a apical clearance in this spot, so we need to bring the whole thing down. I would bring it down in 100% mode because we actually did get rid of this astigmatism. So my first guess is if we just bring it down in 100% mode that we're going to be in better shape. So being able to move that. So lifting up on this second ball and just bringing our apical clearance down. I'm going to be happy with that. The other thing is that they use the B blend, and they have a power that is above 4.5 or so in spherical. So both of those need some increased power to compensate for it. The reason I say we need some increased power, if we watch what the shape of this curve is when I take the B off, it widens up. Basically, this is going to move more tissue and give us a greater amount of refractive change. When we put in the B, we tighten it up here, which is good, but we've lost a little bit of how much tissue we're moving. So in general, when you use the B, we need to increase the power by about half diopter or so. And when we have a higher power here, I also tend to increase the power above this standard 1.25 up to maybe about another half. The combination of the B a half and the power a half means I need to bring this up to about 2.25 instead of the 1.25. So again, in 100% mode, just leaving them both the same, I'm just going to bring this up, which should give us a little bit more power shift also. And I think the combination of those two things, basically bringing our sag down so that we can create that bullseye fluorescein pattern, get us in better alignment, and getting this up closer into the range of where I think the power ought to be for the B and the power of the refraction originally, I think we have a much better chance of having this design work. So that's how I'd do this one.